EU climate rules have caused a response from the US and Qatar. Not good for the EU. That and more on the Energy Newsbeat Daily Stand Up. EU's climate rules have caused a response from the US and Qatar issuing trade threats. You gotta love a good trade threat going on this morning. In an escalating tension over global energy trade, the European Union's push for stringent climate sustainability regulations has drawn sharp rebukes from major LNG suppliers, the United States and Qatar. Holy smokes, the CSDD, the EU's Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, which is a crock of carbon taxes waiting to happen, is absolutely despicable. This directive, seen by critics as a regulatory overreach, applies to both the EU and non-EU firms operating in the bloc. This is absolutely hilarious. U.S. LNG exporters and U.S. Qatar Energy. This was funny. I put this article out. It is absolutely hilarious. When you take a look at projections for the U.S. for 2025, U.S. volumes could hold steady or rise around 50 to 60 BCM given the expanding export capacity, and the U.S. is expected to supply up to 70% of the Europe's LNG. Now, remember, the EU has just signed on a deal where they are looking at getting rid of all Russian gas. Go figure this one out, but go ahead, get rid of all Russian gas. That's 19% of your import energy right now. So go ahead and get yourself off of that. But then you're going to try and put a carbon tax on Qatar and the United States. This is got a one-way ticket to a disaster for the EU. If you think the failure of the Germany's economy is a litmus test or a warning bell for what's going on in the EU, it is. This is even bigger. The next story coming around the corner ties into this because the U.S. Energy Secretary, Chris Wright, who I've interviewed 4 times and is one outstanding human, Qatari energy minister, send a letter to the EU regarding proposed corporate climate regulations. Holy smokes, Batman. I put this out, and within a few hours, Secretary Wright hits a home run. Secretary Wright and Minister Ali Kabahi, I hope I didn't mispronounce your name, sent a letter to the heads of the state of the European Union member states regarding the European Union's proposed corporate sustainability due diligence directive. Holy smokes. We want to write to you as a pivotal moment for the EU's security as 2 of his most trusted partners, the world leading LNG producers, reaffirm our deep commitment to supporting the EU. We write this in the spirit of united in our views to express our deep concern over the continued lack of action to address the universally acknowledged, serious, legitimate concerns raised by the global business community regarding the corporate sustainability due diligence directive, which I call greed, graft, and overreach. So I think this is fantastic. Well done, Secretary Chris Wright. You again are hitting it out of the park for the United States. And again, this is going to be a graft, greed tax that they're going to tax the U.S. folks that are going to get passed on to the U.S. taxpayers because of taxes and everything else. This is hogwash, and it's absolutely stupidity at its finest. So well done, Secretary Wright and Minister Ali Kabahi. I apologize if I mispronounced your name. Let's go to the next story. Recent attacks on energy infrastructure in Hungary and Romania. Who did it is a huge question. On October 20th, 2 major explosions at the refineries in Hungary and Romania. This is critical, halting operations and raised a widespread suspicions of coordinated sabotage. These incidents targeted facilities heavily reliant on Russian oil supplies amid escalating geopolitical tensions over Europe's push to phase out Russian energy imports by 2028. This is absolutely despicable. There is rumors that it was the explosions align with Ukraine's documented strategy of targeting Russian energy infrastructure to disrupt war funding. I don't have any evidence on this. I'm not saying that it was Ukraine, but it sure smells like Ukraine, and it smells like the EU and the UK, the bankers trying to get World War III into NATO, or warmongers trying to get this on, is what it sounds like. I'm not alleging, I'm just saying it sounds like it. Anyway, this is absolutely despicable that we have the head of Poland, I believe his name is Orban, and he is in Hungary in actually trying to help stop the war. We need the war to end. Just draw a line in the sandbox and say, let's all go home. I like that idea. President Trump today in the White House expressed his frustration. Again, President Trump and President Putin, I have said this before, the only way that you guys are going to end the war is to sit down, end the war, and say, wait a minute, we're going to start doing business. Let's start doing business and end the war. Pretty simple. The Bank of London is broke. The EU is failing. They need absolutely a war to keep their funding and fear going. If you just stop and go home, the war is going to end. This is absolutely the way the warmongers need it to keep their finances going. So let's go to the next story. Permian Basin Reliability Plan will cost every customer in the ERCOT region. This is near to dear to me and my heart since this is from Texas. This is article from Joanna Freeby on the Substack, and we recommend subscribing it. The note is in the article for you to go subscribe to her Substack. Subscribe to our Substack, theenergynewsbeat.substack.com. It is a great resource for you. And let's take a look at this article. Electricity is to modern civilization is what blood is to the human body. A quote from energy expert Lars, again, I don't want to butcher his name, Shanakaru. I've reached out to him to get him on the podcast, and I'm trading emails with him right now. The truth is, much of the ERCOT grid is clogged arteries, much as we do, due to bad decisions. Corporate political actors or false pretenses of job creation and tax revenues have driven what is now, despite rush for more gains, initiating a reliability for all through massive transmission lines and fishbone herring across the country. It represents the guise of improving our grid health and future needs, but it will be off the backs of customers with little say in decisions that have already been made at the top. Bad decisions to the patch, to the last bad decisions. This is really an important thing. Many of you have been reading about the transmission lines in the ERCOT, but what you are thinking, it really doesn't concern me. They aren't near me. Most people just want to flip the switch and the lights work. It just needs to happen. After all, that is a service we pay for, and that's a service we expect. That's where you're wrong. This project affects us all, in caps. Everyone with an electric meter will pay. The original price estimate of $33 billion will cost another $10 to $20 a month, depending on how they want to recover their investment. And you know how estimates are. It'll likely add up to be $50 to $60 more on your bill every month. That's pretty big. We've got to get to a point. You've got AI data centers coming across. If you're building an AI data center and you need power, give me a call. I know people. We can figure it out. I can refer you to people to help design the power coming into it. Absolutely love those kind of discussions every day. But if you're sitting there wondering, we've got to be able to figure out why is it that as soon as you put a wind farm or a solar panel on a grid, ERCOT has about 92 gigawatts of steady power that they have to provide. but we have over 180 gigawatts of nameplate capacity because of wind and solar. That is a huge chunk that we've had to pay extra for. Add in another $3.5 billion, I believe what the number is, for the transmission lines to get the wind farms from West Texas to East Texas, and then add this money in on it. Then you have all the data centers coming in. This makes my poor head hurt trying to get a crayon from OSU to try to figure out the math. The math ain't mathing up. And the only way that this happens is that the consumers pay more and we become like New York or California. Do you remember that great commercial? New York City, everybody in Texas is going to be going, we're like California. We're going to have high energy prices. So, this is a great article, and I want to give Joanna a total shout out for this article. She did a great job. Let's go to the next story here. If you just don't absolutely despise politicians enough now, take a listen to this, what Gavin Newsom has done. Gavin Newsom signs a bill allowing California utility companies to draw funding from state wildfire fund. This has corruption written all over it. In a move that has sparked widespread criticism, Governor Newsom has signed a historic package of bipartisan legislation. There was probably one Republican in the state that said yes, and they call it bipartisan legislation, aimed at addressing California's escalating challenges. Among the provisions in the replenishment and expansion of the California Wildfire Fund, effectively allowing utility companies like Southern California Edison to access the $21 billion fund, half of which is funded by state taxpayers to cover costs related to wildfires and fines. That's the critical part. When the utilities are wrong and they've been fined in the past, they can now access state taxes that they then get reimbursed by federal funds, and then they can do this. This is almost like the healthcare issue that Gavin Newsom and everybody they have now figured out ways that they are taking and manipulating healthcare in California, and they're investing billions of dollars. They're taking from the federal government and then putting it into their healthcare system. This is the exact same thing. And as a U.S. taxpayer, President Trump, you need to shut down all funds going to California, and they can't get their corrupt act together. They need a whole new government in California. California is now a national security risk, and Governor Newsom is 100% to blame for him being a national security risk. You're taking a look at, he's the greatest. California used to be the greatest state in the whole United States, and now it is number one in so many bad categories. This is a horrible problem. Let's go to this next story here. Russian oil keeps flowing. Sanctions don't work as intended. This is from Irina Slav. Irina, I saw this original article by Irina Slav on oilprice.com, and I absolutely love my weekly discussions with Irina. She is a class act. Absolutely love everything about her articles and her Substack. But in this article, it is really important when you sit back and take a look. The latest figures paint a clear picture. In September 2025, China's import of Russian crude climbed 4.3 month on month to 8.29 million tons, representing 17.5% of its oil intake. So President Trump, by trying to either put sanctions on India or China, are not going to impact the end of the war. It is absolutely doing nothing but doing one thing. And can you wait? I'm going to listen to see if I hear anybody say, oh, wait a minute. No, it's actually devaluing the dollar because India and China are now arranging to do more things outside of the US dollar. So all this is doing, lengthening the war, is doing nothing than ruining the US dollar. And President Trump, you need to understand this. You can end this war by doing business with President Putin. President Zelensky is trying to drag this out because he absolutely has no clue how to end the war, nor does he want to. He is now a problem. So when you sit back and take a look, sanctions don't work as intended. The consumers end up paying for it. And that great Joe Pesci line when they always say, you always get it in the drive-thru, consumers always get it in the drive-thru on any kind of sanctions. Anyway, let's go to the next story here. And before we go to the next story here, let's take a break and go ahead and pay the bills.
As always, guys, the news and analysis you just heard is brought to you by world's greatest website, www.energynewsbeat.com. Stu and the team do a tremendous job making sure that website stays up to speed, everything you need to know to be at the tip of the spear when it comes to the energy and the oil and gas business. Go ahead and hit the links in the description below for all links to the timestamps, links to the articles, and specifically subscribe to the show on YouTube, subscribe to the show on Apple iTunes, give us a follow there, subscribe to our show on Spotify, please leave comments there, and subscribe to our Substack, theenergynewsbeat.substack.com. That's probably the best place to support the show. Stu does a great job of releasing, 2 to 3 articles a week that really encompass the big themes that are going on. We also drop all of our podcasts there, which give a little bit of a breakdown. We just had a great podcast. So I highly recommend everybody subscribe to our Substack, theenergynewsbeat.substack.com. We'd also like to thank friends of the show, Reese Energy Consulting, for supporting the show, guys. Reese Energy Consulting is the foremost midstream expert, guys. If you at all are dealing with issues in the midstream space, whether you're an upstream company and need help with first purchaser's contract or renegotiating your gas contracts or figuring out where you're going to tie in your next pad because you've got multiple different options and you're trying to break it all down, Reese Energy Consulting can help. If you're in the midstream space, I need an extra pair of hands, need some permitting or regulation help, or need some red team analysis on a final investment decision, guys, they have the team that can help you. Check out reeseenergyconsulting.com. They have clients everywhere and all throughout the country, from 2 people in a garage all the way up to the largestly publicly traded companies in the world. So if you're wondering, are you a good fit for them? The answer is yes. reeseenergyconsulting.com. And finally, guys, investinoil.energynewsbeat.com. We are coming up on the end of the year, and I promise you guys, you do not want to be paying money to Uncle Sam. You want to keep as much money in your pocket. You want to diversify your portfolio a little bit, and you want to get some dividends. You can do that by investing in oil and gas. Check out investinoil.energynewsbeat.com. Fill out our portfolio survey and our tax calculator. And guess what, you guys are going to get a nice ebook that tells you here's what you should look for when you invest in oil and gas, and also figure out what your tax burden is and figure out how much you might save relative to your tax burden if you did invest in oil and gas, guys. We practice what we preach here, guys. We do this stuff ourselves. Investinoil.energynewsbeat.com. Don't give your money to Uncle Sam. Figure out and find out if oil and gas investing is for you. Depending on if you qualify, we will, again, send you all that information, and we may or may not point you in the right direction. Again, investinoil.energynewsbeat.com.
The U.S. needs to restock the strategic oil reserve. This would save money and jobs. I don't know how Chris Wright did this. I put this out, and several hours right after I put this story out, the U.S. Department of Energy today announced a new solicitation to acquire 1 million barrels of oil for the strategic oil reserves. This is actually very cool. Well done, Secretary Chris Wright. Again, this is the second time that I put out an article. I know it's a coincidence, but I'm going to sleep good tonight knowing that at least I'm on the right track. And Secretary Chris Wright, if you're listening to this podcast, you are on the right track when people are trying to take you down in the hit pieces on Politico. Keep doing what you're doing. You're the right man for the right job, and great job. This is a direct quote. After the previous administration recklessly drained the SPR, the Strategic Oil Reserve, for political purposes, President Trump promised to refill and manage the national security asset with more responsibility, said Secretary Wright. Thanks to the President and Congress, we'll be able to begin the process of refilling the SPR. With this process, we won't be complete overnight. These are ambitious ambitious, and these are actions, important step in strengthening our security. This announcement delivers on President Trump to rebuild America's strategic strength and restore. Currently, the SPR only holds about 400 million barrels of its 700 million barrel capacity that President Biden pulled to win a midterm election. And that absolutely is despicable. Hats off to you, Secretary Wright. Again, not sure if you're reading my articles or not, but you are on the right track and you are the right man for the right job. Let's go to my last story here. I've got a great article or a great interview coming out here. This article, Abaxx confirms growing trading activity in its North Pacific, Asia, and U.S. Gulf of Mexico LNG futures. This one is from Joe Ray, Chief Commercial Officer at Abaxx Commodity Futures Exchange and Clearinghouse. I just had the pleasure of interviewing him, and it's in production right now. It'll probably be going out sometime next week. This is a cool technology. Hats off to Abaxx Technologies Incorporated. Abaxx is actually fantastic. They are doing trading. They are the owner of Abaxx Commodity Exchange and Clearinghouse. This is really cool. Trading volume in NADAP futures reached 960 lots in the week ending October 17th, 2025, while GOM futures reached 2,394 lots. Total LNG volume rose more than 80% from August to September. And again, this is huge. The big difference that Abaxx has been able to do is they've got a trading house and clearing house where you can actually buy and sell LNG and oil and other commodities. Stay tuned. You're going to be hearing more about the unique way that they've been able to solve this. This is energy and commodity and supply line security at its finest. Way to go over there, Joe. Thanks for sending me this article, and I do appreciate it. So with that, like, subscribe, share, go to energynewsbeat.co or energynewsbeat.com or go to theenergynewsbeat.substack. Take a look at our YouTube channel or anything else. Find us anywhere we can. Hey, have an absolutely outstanding day. Talk to you all soon.